Hello, everyone. This is Robert Aceves, and this is another episode of Mindfitpodcast. And I'm here with Neil Babins. How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's been quite an interesting couple weeks. It's been very hot lately and very humid. How's it over there?
Very hot and very humid. You're right. It's was 100 and 102, 103 a couple days ago. Now it's in the high 90s, and we're actually lucky because we're a little bit inland, but not as inland as you can go. You go, further out to like Santa Clarita, it's like 110, 115. Um, Death Valley had like record temperatures of 133. It's
Hmm.
since 1913. It's been really, really, really hot. To walk outside is like an outdoor oven. It's been pretty, yeah, um, pretty grueling, But
Hmm.
yeah, and sudden too, just suddenly hit out of nowhere. It was kind of mild up until now, and it's only August, so we tend to
Yeah,
have hot Septembers here too,
yeah,
and probably into October a little bit also. We'll probably have a hot Halloween, you
right.
know.
That's assuming
Yeah,
we have a Halloween.
yeah, really. I know we'll have to have Zoom meetings for Halloween. That'd be interesting.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Death Valley just recorded the hottest temperature ever recorded on planet Earth, and it was 130 degrees.
Yeah. I think
It
it's
was
133 actually.
133. There you go.
Fahrenheit.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Fahrenheit. It's horrible.
Yeah. And
So
I think they
it's,
said something since 1913 or something like that. It was the hottest recorded. Yeah,
oh, I
since
thought it was
1913.
ever, but we must
Maybe.
have read different articles.
Maybe was ever the hottest temperature on Earth. Although I think the hottest temperature on Earth I remember reading somewhere else was like 134 or something like that. So I think we came close anyway. But yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite interesting. So
Yeah.
anyway, today we're going to be sharing with you guys and girls, whoever's watching us, we're going to be talking about this documentary we watched recently on Netflix. It's a docu-series called Unwell, and it was very interesting to watch. There are a lot of people that tried different alternatives for wellness. One of them was essential oils. Another one was fasting. They had another episode on bee stings and I forget. Oh, ayahuasca, which is it's like hallucinogen. It's a mushroom. It's a root actually from Peru, and so, uh, watching this documentary, one of the things that I realized is a lot of the people that were trying these new, alternatives. Some of them, they heal, they felt better, and others, didn't have such a good experience. And then they also had doctors talk about the science behind the things that they're doing. And one of the things that I found interesting is that people tend to there was a pattern watching the show that I noticed. And a lot of times, one of the things that happened is because of that alternative, they started changing some things in their lives. And in some ways they started to become more mindful of their thoughts, of the way they thought and the way they did things. And by changing certain things or letting go of things from their past, that's where the healing came in. And so I think that's a very interesting subject. What were your thoughts on this docu series, Neil?
Well, the two episodes that I did watch, I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I watched the one on essential oils and I watched the one on tantra.
Mm.
And I like to save a couple of episodes per night. That's when I that's when I unwind and finally after two episodes probably my maximum. So I felt that that's exactly right. Is that in some form or other, people reach a certain state of mindfulness or of clarity with their past. And the idea is that once you heal the wounds of your past, those parts of you that you're holding on to that are burdened and are holding on to wounds and trauma, and once you bring that emotional charge down at the base of that, you'll find that a lot of what you do in the present moment is a lot more effectual, a lot more adaptive, a lot more peaceful and tranquil. And it really doesn't matter, honestly, does not matter how you arrive at that place, as long as you're not hurting yourself or somebody else and as long as it's a permanent change, as long as it's an ongoing, consistent change or alteration that happens. So I find that whether or not the essential oils or the tantra or any bee stings or anything else that we're going to see or have seen are working, quote unquote, or actually what was cause and effect of the healing,
Hmm.
the healing was taking place. So if a person is doing something I think the takeaway from this is a person is doing something and feels and believes that they feel better based on what they were doing. It may or may not be directly correlated to what they were doing, but something in the web of what they were doing was making them feel more mindful and bringing down the emotional charge of whatever wounds were there. So it could be correlational, it could have been, interrelated in some way or not in some way. But it was like what I called earlier a grandiose placebo effect. But it doesn't matter if the healing has happened. Um, the only thing I would say is that I think it matters, and I've talked about this more after, that I think it does matter because if you don't know what it was that healed you, how do you do it again when you find new things to be healed or you get re injured in life and you have another wound? So anything that is like a magical pill to me, or like try these essential oils, dip them on your arm, swallow them, put them in your tea, and wow, you're just going to have this. Even if that were the case, I'd say that's great. But in my profession, I would say that's great, but how do you maintain self agency from that? What if you have no essential oils available? What if they get taken off the market? What if, what if they stop working for you in some way? How do you access the same thing you access to get to that mindful place
Mhm.
without what it is you were ingesting? So I don't believe in miracle cures or miracle treatments for that reason. A lot of clients, when they say to me, well, how do I fix it? How do I fix it? How do I do? And I'm like, that's a good question. How do you do it? I throw it right back at them. It's frustrating and they don't necessarily like you for it. And they figure, what am I paying, this person to tell me you figure it out? But yeah, you figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You guide yourself to figure out how you're going to heal. I can show you the steps, but I'm not going to say just dip a couple of, ounces of oil into your tea and that's all you need to do. You know,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, and this. So first, mindfulness. I love that word, by the way, mindfulness. I use it all the time on my
yeah,
YouTube channel. I have a lot of meditations on mindfulness. And to me, mindfulness, it's a really cool word. If you look it up in Spanish, they usually say atención plena, which translates to full attention. Like, so you put in your full attention, and it actually kind of sounds like that when you put your mind full. So your whole mind is into something, right? So I feel like the healing comes from those moments when we are 100% in that moment. I can think of a few things that have happened to me personally. For example, like I love taking my supplements in the morning, and I do all kinds of stuff, all natural, vitamins and things like that. And there's one in particular that I use called resveratrol. Have you ever heard of it?
no, uh-uh.
So resveratrol, if you look it up, it's basically the skin of the grape. And years ago, like I'm talking maybe 12, 15 years ago, there was an article, and it started actually to become very big in there was a one of those pyramid scams that used to be around. It was like a grape juice, and it had resveratrol in it. And basically, they take you need like 1,000 bottles of wine in order to get like 500 milligrams of resveratrol. And the doctors found that the grape skin, when you take it in such big quantities, it actually can help you stay, young forever. And it does something to the gene that makes us get old and whatnot. So, and there was all this, it was in 60 minutes. I saw that and I thought, oh my gosh, that's probably true,
Yeah, now that you just said that, you're going to have 100,000 people running out and buying grape skins, and
Well,
peeling off their grapes right now. Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I've been taking it for, good 15 years now, and it's very expensive. The one that I get, it's from, I get from Amazon, and it's a company called um, Biomax or something like that. I don't remember. No, Biotivia. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Mm.
And so, the thing is, I don't even know if it's true. I mean, I've been there's been some research. They gave it to some rats at some point, and the rats, they had tons of energy. It helped them, to stay healthy and young, and they lasted longer than other rats and whatnot. So you can read the research on it. But for me, I don't even know if it's true, like I said. But when I take that pill every morning, in my mind, I am mindful of it, and I think, "Oh, this is gonna help me stay young. This is
Hmm.
gonna help me stay
Hmm.
healthy." And it, in some ways, the physical pill becomes a mental pill for me. and I
Hmm.
use it and I take it. And that alone, I feel like gives me energy, makes me feel better. And in some ways, I feel like that's keeping me young, even though I'm still getting old, and there's still things that come up. But I feel like that's how, like you said, that the placebo effect comes in.
Hmm.
I feel like sometimes we have to believe in it before it works, right? So belief is a very strong, component or variable in all the things that you saw in that documentary. I don't want to
Hmm.
mention all of the other ones because you haven't watched them all, but there are some really
Right.
good things about it.
We do this podcast every week, so we have lots of material. Yeah, coming forward. Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's exactly right. There's a lot of things that become ritualistic for us that make us feel better on a
mhm,
psychological level just because we do them every single day. Myself, I take vitamin B complex,
mhm,
vitamin B with a little bit of C and every day. And I'm not sure if it makes a difference or not. I mean, if I stopped taking for a week, would I notice a difference? I think I would notice a difference if I started thinking about noticing a difference. I'm not sure if it's a complete placebo or not, but and we all have something that we do. And as long as it's not harming you, as long as what you're taking is not in abundance or, against medical advice or anything like that, if it makes you feel structured, if it gives you a format that shifts the way you think or shifts the way you feel at the beginning of your day, then I think that that is a positive step. You got to create a platform to walk on so that you can go through life and get to the nitty gritty. I just believe personally in getting to the origin of the issue, the underlying issue, eventually, in some form, in some way, and everybody approaches that in a different way. But if that brings you into a different space at the beginning of the day, what I mean, wonderful. Because I mean, we want to start off on a place where we have a strong foot on the ground, and sometimes we don't wake up that way, you know,
hmm,
or we're not looking forward to the day, or we wake up in a certain mood, we didn't get enough sleep, or whatever it may be. And if something gets you into that modality, and it's not harmful to do, then I think that even if it is a placebo effect, I'm not one of those people that, will get down on somebody simply because there's no science or the science is not, 100% behind it. But that depends. What I'm saying, if it's what you're talking about, it's not harming you and it makes you feel better and it shifts you into that positive modality for the rest of the day, like you say, like a magic pill or a mental pill, then I think that's wonderful. I
yeah.
think the issue gets to be an issue when people start to believe it, as you said, believe too much and believe it without critical thinking, without thinking it all the way through. And it's just presented in docu-series, especially on things like Netflix and Hulu, where they only have 24 minutes to show you something, and they
Mhm,
edit it together in such a way that makes it look, wow, I should go out and get myself some XYZ, or I should avoid XYZ. I know a lot of people, even friends of mine, who will say, "I just read in an article, blah 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 blah," and I'm like, I am rolling my eyes, and I'm like, "You read in the article? I can show you as many articles that counter what that person said,
mhm,
if you want to. Not everybody has to become an academic, but I do think we need to polish up critical thinking skills because not every variable is considered and explained in these docuseries. You
mhm,
know, how do they study it? Did they isolate every variable? Are they telling you everything? How do you know they're telling you everything? In a case of that, I think I mentioned earlier that autistic girl in the first episode of with the essential oils, you don't really know what was
mhm,
making her feel better or act more tranquil. You know what I'm saying? We don't know if they were feeding her something different. Something happened in the family they're not telling you about that shifted it, or perhaps it's just a natural progression of her self development inside of the autistic um, paradigm. You don't know if the essential oils were what caused it or didn't. You have to really isolate the variables. And yeah, you do have to do it like an academic research paper if you want to know what is truly cause and effect or what's correlational or what has no relationship whatsoever. There's, I'm not good at math, but there's those things called relationship quotients or coefficients, right? That
mhm,
all the variables of what you're doing, there's a certain relationship, a mathematical relationship that is shown from trial and error. How much of this is really dependent upon this, and how much of it is just, you know, is not dependent upon it. It's just correlational or just happens to be randomly, seemingly associated, and how much of it is, like you said, placebo, or just coming to a place of mindfulness.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this reminds me of a research that I loved, where basically they had a rat in a cage, and then the rat had this little leverage, right? So there would be times when, the cage would get electrocuted and the rat would go and basically learn to move the lever so that whenever it moved the shocks would stop. So, eventually the rat would know, okay, it's, I've like shocks, I have to go and move the lever. And then what they did is they actually, stopped, doing that, the shocks, but the rat would, I mean, they would still shock the cage, but then when she moved the lever, it wouldn't stop the shocks. And yet the rat would continue to try to do it, to see, because the rat would learn that, when he did before, it would stop the shocks. So
Mm,
basically, what they found is that, when the rat learned, and was doing the lever, it would, feel like it was doing something. And even though the shocks were not going away, doing something made the rat last longer and not get sick anymore. Because, normally rats, when they get shocks and they would not be able to do anything about it, they end up with cancer within 7 days or so. Meaning, in life, when we feel that there's no way of doing things, like we have no we become helpless, then
mhm,
we tend to, like, get sick because we can't do anything about my problem, I can't fix it. Therefore, I just go inside and I feel miserable and then I get cancer. But
mhm,
the rat, whenever it was, trying doing the lever thing, even though it was not making the pain go away, just that feeling that you're doing something, quote
mhm,
unquote, to fix your problem made the rat, stay healthier and live longer. Because that feeling that we're actually doing something right can make us feel like we're doing something about it. Therefore, it's like a placebo effect in some way that can help you stay healthier. And I feel like with the autistic lady, I feel like in some ways when someone has autistic kids, they become desperate at some point because they've tried everything and nothing works. And then they find something that makes them feel like maybe there's some improvement. And then they, attach to that because, they want to know, they want to feel like something's happening. And that alone, I feel, is where the healing comes in. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. People, when people have self autonomy or self agency over their lives in some way, or feel that they do, that certainly can be very, very tranquilizing, and gives you a sense of power or personal
Hmm.
power. And even if there is no correlation or cause and effect behind what you're actually doing, it's helplessness is. When we feel helpless, we often tell ourselves not only that we're helpless, but we also often shame ourselves or humiliate ourselves with our inner critic voice, also saying, "There's nothing I can do. You're helpless. You know what I mean? You're worthless. Life is over. There's nothing you can do." And that just makes the wounds that a person has even worse. It's like speaking to young children because most of our wounds actually are personified, and in this, in my perspective, as young children because that's when most of our wounds happened. And we're speaking to them saying, "You can't do anything. You're helpless. You're worthless. Forget it." And that makes it worse. That increases the level of emotionality in the basement, so to speak, which just increases our need to try to push it down even more. So we become more depressed, more anxious, more stressed out, um, have more cravings, quote, urges for alcohol or substance abuse or whatever it is that we're doing, self harm, and it just makes the whole situation worse. So self autonomy, self agency is very important,
Hmm.
to feel that we're doing something that gives us a sense of, like the rat, you know, pushing on the lever, even though the lever is not what's causing the rat to feel better. I can do something. You know what I'm saying? I've got
Hmm.
self autonomy, and I think that that's terrific. The only issue I have is when it's marketed to people as it's the tapping that's making you feel better. No, it's the self autonomy that's making you feel better. It's the self agency that's making you feel better. I always tell people, do something you have control over, especially nowadays during the pandemic. Do something you have control over as you shift your paradigm. Doesn't matter what it is. Do puzzles. You know what I mean? If you can't travel to Europe, rent cabins. If you can't, go see friends, go on a hike. You know what I'm saying? Learn a language. I have clients who want to learn languages or research things online. Um, but do whatever it is that you're doing that creates self autonomy in
Hmm.
some way. If it's taking vitamins or supplements, try essential oils as long as you're not taking too many that it becomes a medical issue. You know, it gives you autonomy, and that's important to curb the feeling of helplessness. It doesn't cure helplessness, and it doesn't cure the issue. But if it makes you feel more mindful, more centered, then it gives you more tools to be able to deal with the healing that you need to do when that comes up. So my point there is that ultimately, what's down there, even the mom who has a daughter who has autism, the sadness she may be dealing with, the frustration,
Hmm.
the disappointment, ultimately she's going to want to have to deal with that as well. She's going to want to have to deal with that as well, not just create something that gives her a sense that everything is managed and okay. The reason I say that is because eventually, and I see this all the time, down the road, could be 10 years, could be 20, it's going to catch up with us if we don't deal with
Hmm.
what we're actually feeling. It's going to find a way out. So, but yeah, ultimately, tap the lever if that's what's going to get you through the day. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially now they've taken all the levers away, you know,
Yeah.
at least in Los Angeles they have. They're opening up someplace else, but, other places. But yeah,
Yeah,
find
there's
your tap.
definitely yeah, there's definitely a lot of good that comes from doing something versus just staying, waiting for things to happen. And also, being mindful, like you said, of your feelings and how you react to things. I feel like, for example, like when I go to the doctor, I don't think I've ever been asked by a doctor, "Are you happy? How are you, you know, dealing with life in certain ways."
Mm,
And most recently, I had a case of bed bugs, and for the last 3 months, I was getting this rashes on my body. And I thought it was because of my YouTube channel, right? Because I was so stressed about it and I was doing all these things. But it turns out it was bed bugs. And the first time I went to the doctor about 3 months ago, I told the doctor, I just started this YouTube channel, I'm very stressed. The doctor completely ignored my feelings and what I was telling him. And he went right to, okay, I think this looks like bed bugs. And I was like, no, there's no way it's bed bugs. No, I don't think so. And I was in denial of that. But still, the fact that I was stressed and I was, really
mm,
upset about, having to deal with all these things that I was dealing with at the time, including this pandemic. um, he finally kept saying, "Oh, I think it's bed bugs," and I was like, "No, it's not." So I tried different doctors, and they were, giving me creams for dermatology, neuro something, like all this skin diseases, and nothing was helping. Nothing was helping. So finally, recently, I looked under my bed, and they were hiding really well. But mind you, I'm very clean. I don't have carpet, and my room, everything is very clean, but these things, they just hide really well under your bed, and it's so hard to find them, and they come out at night and they eat you alive, basically. And they've been snacking on me for the past 3 months until recently.
mm.
And as soon as I found the problem, I cleaned the bed, got rid of them, and everything's back to normal. But going back to the doctor, I wish that the doctor would have listened to me, more of my mind and how I felt about things. No, I get it. I think he was right. Um, but at the same time, if he would have at least acknowledged my feelings, I think
Mhm.
I would have felt a little bit better, and maybe I would have, listened to him more. But I just, I thought in my mind that I was right, even though he was. But the fact is, if he would have acknowledged my feelings, I think that would have made me listen to him more, I guess. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense, but I just thought I would share that with everyone.
100%, 100%. It makes sense. I mean, that kind of rapport that, any kind of professional should have with their patient or client is to listen and to acknowledge and to validate where that person's coming from. Even if it's not the case, you don't feel it's the case, they have fears and anxieties that it might be the case. And it's all comprehensive, right? Your wellness is all comprehensive. When you're worried about your YouTube channel, you're not being mindful, right? And if you're not being mindful, whatever I give you, even if it works, might work less, or you might have a perception of it working less. I mean, that has a lot to do with it, your state of mindfulness. And yeah, listening is the most important thing. It reminded me so much while you were talking. I don't know if I should, I guess I'll use this as a reference because I was watching the Golden Girls when I was up in a cabin last week, because it's one of the things that you could always, conveniently watch. There's an episode where B. Arthur, Dorothy Spornak, goes to a doctor because she's having a lot of fatigue and not feeling very well. And no doctor, even the best doctors in New York and wherever she goes, can't find anything wrong with her. One of them even sort of ridicules her, telling her she's getting old, she's getting paranoid, she's got anxiety, she should go see a psychiatrist. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes that doesn't happen for people, that they're having, other emotional issues that are manifesting as something physical. But she turns out she had something in the show called chronic fatigue syndrome
Mm.
that another doctor was able to find through blood tests, that there was a reason why she was becoming tired and forgetful and all these other symptoms that she was having. And she approaches the doctor. She sees him having dinner with his wife in the later episode. And I shouldn't spoil it, but she confronts him and says, all you needed to do was listen to me, but you made me feel like I was a crazy person when I really had something wrong with me, you know. And it made me think of that episode while you were talking, because either way, people just want to be heard wherever they're coming from, whether it's the
Mhm.
bed bugs, or chronic fatigue syndrome, or whether it is just coming from stress from a YouTube channel or just stress from getting older. You want to listen to somebody comprehensively. And I think that's a good message for anybody in any field where they deal with people. Listen to
Mhm.
them comprehensively, because it could be a combination of all those things. It might be a little
True.
bit of a YouTube channel, it might be a little bit of a bed bug or a syndrome. It might be a
Yeah.
mild version of a syndrome, but it's being made into moderate or high from stress.
Yeah.
So very
Totally agree.
important to listen. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to mindfulness, and I tell you, this whole time I was practicing every single thing I've ever learned in my life. Those bed bugs really put me to the test. But yeah,
I've
it's
never had bed
really.
bugs. I'm like, I'm gonna look under my bed now.
Oh, I learned so much recently because I've been watching tons of videos on this and how to get rid of them and clean my room and everything. And they are one of the biggest problems now that people, I think it was 1 out of 4 Americans has had or will have bed bugs at some point in their lives, and it's just crazy. Like it's getting more and more of a thing because these things are really hard to remove, to get rid of. And so unfortunately where I live, I can't, do like a big, thing where they put a blanket or yeah, I guess a blanket over the place and fumigate the whole thing.
Oh, like
You know,
termite kind of.
yeah, like
Yeah, yeah.
that. So because I live in a condo, so there's all other condos there, and so they have to do it with the HOA. So I have to wait until that happens. Who knows when that will be? But there are other things you can do. There's a lot of information on the internet that you can find. Luckily, it's all
Mhm.
available. But the biggest thing is that these things, you almost just talking about it, I think it makes you feel itchy, right? That you might
Yeah, I
have
got
bed
an itch on
bugs.
my right leg all of a
Yeah,
sudden. Yeah, I did. Like,
that's how I feel.
yeah,
But I
that's.
tell you, there are so many things you can do. Especially, it's all in our minds, and being mindful is a big, big thing for any disease, anything that we have. If you pay attention, that's how you can, really find that healing and see where it comes from. Because sometimes, I thought it was all in my mind this whole time. I thought it was just the stress from the YouTube channel and this things that I've been working on lately. And no, it was. I mean, it was like you said. Maybe it was a combination of both, and maybe it was my stress was making those bugs bite even harder and seem more stress, like it would stress me out more. I don't know, but the point is mindfulness is something that if we all practice it, just think about, we'll talk more about it in the future, but basically just it's basically going in and observing your thoughts, observing what happens to your body, and being more in connection with yourself and what's around you and your surroundings, and being mindful we can find solutions to a lot of problems. So anyway, any last words before we end this podcast?
I would just say, try to be in the here and now as much as you possibly can. And when you're receiving a message, either from a docu-series or a research paper or anything else, and I do mean anything else, and I won't say more, you know, make sure you're practicing your critical thinking skills. Isolate all variables. How do you know that's true just because they tell you that's true? And they could be anybody. So I just think it would really give us a lot of personal power and self-agency to, you know, research, research and understand what's really happening. If it makes you feel better, that's great. But feeling better in the moment is good, but feeling better in the long run is ultimately our ultimate goal. So if it's
Totally
a,
agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
instant gratification, it
Thanks,
might
Neil.
not be enough.
All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone for listening. And hopefully, we'll see you next week. We're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Remember, we are also on YouTube, so you can actually watch this podcast now on our YouTube channel. Just look up MindFit Podcast. You can also go into my channel, Robert Aceves. I have a bunch of meditations on there that can really help you. My English channel is not doing so well, but my Spanish channel actually took off, which is amazing, which is why I've been so busy lately. But either way, you can go on there and listen to my meditations. You can also follow us on Instagram at mindfitpodcast. And so, hopefully, if you have questions or comments or concerns, you can send them to us there.
Mhm.
And thank you to all the people who've been donating. We really appreciate that. And we'll see you next time. Bye,
All
Neil.
right. Bye bye.
This podcast is brought to you by MindFit. Please help us to share this podcast with your friends and family to grow this community. And if you'd like to donate to this podcast, or if you'd like to share your comments, questions, or concerns, send them to mindfitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call us directly at 714-328-4661.